Hello everyone, my name is Samantha Werner, and as Anita said, I am a master's student at the University of New Hampshire with a focus in environmental economics. And today I'm going to present some preliminary results from a consumer survey that we sent to residents of Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire to investigate their preferences for local and organic produce. So the motivation for this study really comes from the fact that local agriculture has been on the rise for the past 30 years, and this rise is attributed to the perceptions of consumers who purchase local and organic foods. So a lot of people who purchase organic and local foods tend to think of it as healthier, better quality, safer sometimes, and the local consumers often say that they get a better sense of community and they enjoy knowing their local farmers. We also can actually see economic benefits coming from local agricultural increases. So we actually see increased jobs and increased local income from these local agricultural increases. And we also see multiplier effects such as increases in agro-tourism and agro-research. Lastly, there's been a documented willingness to pay from recent literature suggesting that consumers of local and organic produce are more likely to pay a higher premium compared to that of conventionally grown produce. In more recent literature, we see that those who purchase local food are willing to pay a higher premium compared to those who purchase organically grown food. So it's a higher premium for that local. They find some certain value over that of organic. New England has actually followed suit with their increase in local agricultural shares. We also see increased legislation from Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire, which increase the productivity and intensification of local agriculture, including legislation increasing local job initiatives and local produce. So we also see independent groups like Food Solutions New England, which has a special interest in expanding the local agriculture as well, and they envision New England to produce 50% of its diet locally by 2060. So these are pretty big goals for local agriculture. 50 by 60 plan, yeah. Yeah, so this is a pretty big goal for increase in expanding local agriculture in New England. However, there's been very little research on the actual producers and consumers' perception of local and organic foods. So our job, until now there hasn't been that much research in New England in terms of consumer and producer perceptions on expansion. So our job, our goals, is to have a two-tiered approach. We want to look at the local producers in Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and we actually addressed that with focus groups not too long ago and identified their barriers in their current production and also their views on expansion. Our second tier, and what I'll be talking about today, is some preliminary results from our consumer survey, which asked about what Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire residents feel about organic and local produce, including their willingness to pay. So we'll be focusing on number 3 today. So we sent surveys to Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire residents, and we asked the primary shopper to fill it out and send it back to us. And the main thing I want you to take away from this slide is the big red box there, which demonstrates that those who replied to our survey were mostly those who had purchased locally grown produce or organically grown produce or both in the past year. So 96% of the responses said that they had purchased locally grown produce in the past year, and 88% for organic in the past year. So I'll reiterate that as we go through the results. So we did ask our participants how knowledgeable they feel about organic. As I said in the beginning, a lot of the value from organic comes from those perceptions that consumers have about the product itself. That's where the value is generated. So how knowledgeable do you feel about organic produce? And it was about a 6.6 on the average on a 0 to 10 scale of knowledgeability. When we asked what their motivations were for purchasing organic produce, we found that the top reasons were that it supports local farms, the quality of produce, and healthy eating. We asked these same questions to our participants about locally grown produce as well. And again, from the 0 to 10 scale, there was about a 6.2 average on how much they think they know about locally grown produce. And I found this to be interesting because, as we talked about before, 96% of our respondents had purchased locally grown food. So they actually think they know less about locally grown food, but they purchase it more. That's kind of interesting, comparatively to organic, which they said they knew about, on average, 6.5 on knowledgeability scale. Now you'll notice that the motivations for purchasing locally grown food were very similar to that of organically grown food, with supporting local farms, quality of produce, and healthy eating. These were the top 3 for purchasing organic produce as well. So when we actually compare the two together, we can start to parse out some differences. You notice that organic is the blue and local is the red. First of all, the second bar in, you'll see that quality of produce was more important to those who purchased locally grown produce. And then as we go further to the right, we see that there are differences between the organic and local, where organic buyers tend to value environmental quality concerns and food safety concerns over that of local buyers. And we also get to see that local buyers tend to focus more on sense of community and knowing the farmer for their motivations for purchasing local food. So there are some differences that start parsing out when you compare them side by side. And it's very similar to the literature out there. We also asked our participants who do not purchase local and or organic produce what their reasons were. And that big blue would be price on these pie graphs. So price was the main deterrent for organic buyers in the first graph over there, and that's 93% of the participants said that that was their main deterrent. You'll also see local produce on the further end here, and they said about 70% was also deterred by price, followed by hours of operation, lack of variety, and lack of information about local vendors. Now you also have to remember that this graph is a smaller sample size because 96% of our participants had purchased local before. So this is a very small sample. We'd need to get a bigger sample of those who don't purchase local and organic foods to really solidify what their main reasons for not buying is. We also asked our participants if they were to try something new, what method would get them to try a new fruit or vegetable? This was a question directly taken from our focus groups, which we had with the local farmers from Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and they said, we're trying this idea of recipe cards. Do these recipe cards work? And also, how can we get people to try something new? So we tried to directly answer some of their questions, and this is one of them, where we see that test taste stations were the #1, and then followed by discounted specials. And that's over recipe cards. So what better way to get someone to try something new than make something delicious and then have them love it? So, I mean, I can resonate with that feeling. Lastly, we asked our participants if they were to receive information about their local vendors, what is the best method to get them information? And this, again, was directly from our producer focus groups. They wanted to see how can we keep in touch with those who don't buy and those who do buy from us. Unfortunately, this is mostly representing those who do currently buy local and organic, as I've said before. And the top methods to stay in touch with their consumers would be, or producers, would be word of mouth, road signs, and newspaper ads, which were all dominating compared to the electronic methods of social media, email, and even local event calendars. Now, this may be due to the older population that we did sample. However, 96% of them are purchasing local, so maybe it could also do with the type of people that like to have interactions with people, face-to-face interactions. It's just a hypothesis. So in conclusion, and things that I want you to take away from this presentation today is that the knowledgeability of those who purchase local and organic foods is about, it's higher than average, but we're not reaching that 80% mark. And so we had a 6.2 and a 6.5 on the knowledgeability scale, 0 to 10. And if that's from people who are currently buying local and organic, think of that as a baseline. So what are people who do not purchase local and organic? What do they know, or what do they not know? And that's where the value is. If you know more about local and organic, you know more about, hey, this is generating local jobs. Hey, this is helping my farmer. So this is something that speaks to me in terms of we can do a better job of educating. We know that local and organic buyers from the sample, they value healthy eating, supporting the local farmers, and quality of produce. Those were the top 3. When you look a little closer, you see that organic buyers tend to value food safety and environmental quality compared to those who purchase locally. And local buyers tend to value sense of community and knowing their farmers comparatively to those who purchase organic. The reasons for not purchasing was price from a very small sample. We'll need to sample more to get a better response rate of that. Taste test stations were the best method to get people to try something new and diversify, along with mixed bundles or mixed discounted bundles. And that was over recipe cards, so if you're looking to try something new. And lastly, word of mouth and road signs tend to dominate over the electronic methods, so keep that in mind. There's a lot more that we want to do with this data, such as an econometric model, which will tell us willingness to pay. So a percent premium, we can give and we did that for 6 different types of produce. And we can give a percent markup of how much people are willing to pay for organic and local. And that will be for New Englanders. So that's some data that we're going to get to. We also want to do cross-state comparisons between Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Are there differences between us and Vermont? And lastly, the thing that we can't get from our data is who's not purchasing local and why. We're actually going to send out another survey and target those who have not purchased local, and we can do this through Qualtrics, where they force, all right, if you don't purchase local, answer the survey. So we'll get a response from those people, and then we'll start to ask those other questions, like how do you want to be reached? Maybe it's social media. Maybe they're the social media people. Maybe they don't feel like they're educated enough about local and organic foods. So I think this is crucial for reaching our goals that we have set for increasing the local agricultural sector. And I look forward to presenting again. Do I have time for questions?
We have time for a couple of questions, and then we're going to switch over the mics. So,
yes?
You were able to parse any information out based on your survey response. You got a 15% response, a little under, which is normal.
Yeah, it's a very low response rate.
Well, it's not untypical, I think.
It's not good.
I don't know what was your distribution. Were you able to figure anything out from your distribution and then the responses that you had from the people who didn't respond?
I actually printed out the entire demographics, and it's in the back here, and it shows that we got more women than men, obviously, but we also got all age groups, and we had a lot of different types of income levels, and we haven't necessarily looked at the differences between those because the amount of people who didn't purchase is so low that it wouldn't necessarily get a clear conclusion about. We could draw false conclusions given that it's such a small amount, but given our distribution, we can tell that we've surveyed a lot of people, but we will look into, who are the people that aren't buying and why. And it's just a small amount, so we want to wait until we get that full response and say, okay, we can draw some clear conclusions based on that sample.
buying locally and how convenient it is.
Okay.
In some places, I see that you have to make an extra trip to go someplace to buy locally, or you have to go much farther than your local grocery store. So is it that thrown into?
So anything that we didn't add into why you do not purchase local, we have an other section. So if they felt that, you know, it wasn't price, it wasn't the variety of food, but that kind of speaks to what you're saying too, because
To drive home from work.
but it is the drive. So they can put in it's inconvenient. So there is a write-in section, and we'll keep looking at that once we get our focus on those people who aren't buying locally. But yes, there is an option for them to say it's inconvenient, and we will capture that once we get enough responses.
Sorry, I might have missed this, but how did you determine who was going to be part of your sample? Like, where did you identify individuals?
No, maybe I forgot to say it. So it's just Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire residents, and it had to be the primary shopper. So we actually purchased addresses, physical addresses, and sent them out so we could have a random distribution. So it was just luck of the draw, and they had to send it back to us. And be the primary shopper above 18.
I came in late, so I may have missed this. Apologize. By definition, the organic and the local,
Yeah.
are these both locally grown? Are you
Right.
including organics from the grocery store?
Right, so organic, we kind of put a disclaimer, yeah, and I probably should have made this more clear, but organic just means you can sell it at the grocery store. It just has to be organic, whereas local has to be described as local, and we describe local within a 50-mile radius of where you're from.
And the local, should the local be organic in this survey?
Local and organic are completely separated in this. So if you do purchase, so we did have some respondents saying, I only purchase organic because it's local, and vice versa. So sometimes I said, I only bought this one package of organic celery, I think it was, and they said it was because it was the only thing available. Right? So they're supposed to be separate. If someone's only buying local because it's organic, or vice versa, then that was
So
the
by
reason.
definition, the local is not organic?
Right.
Okay.
Local can be conventionally grown, as many of us currently are doing. So we're trying to parse that out.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.